guys, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and today, as you can see by the mat here in front of me, we are working in the sewing room because we're going to be making our next 12-inch block in our series Chicken Farm Quilt Blocks. So if you've been sewing along with me and have been enjoying this project, here is the next one in that series. And you know, these blocks are so fun and versatile that you can use the blocks individually and not even part of a quilt, but use them as a block for a project. And what I have been using my blocks for, I am doing placemats, just because right now I don't have the time to do a full quilt, but I can do some placemats. So if you remember our first one, let's see, our first one was actually the Blue Rooster. And so here was our first one, and then we had the rooster tracks. Then we had the red hen, and I shared the blocks of the little chicks. And last time, the last block I shared was this egg basket, and then we made little eggs for the side. So these are the three that I have made already, and as you can see, they all coordinate, and they are using more of a, I don't know, a Civil War style or turn of the century 1800s to 1900 fabric, and I think they're turning out really nicely. But in my patterns that I've been making, I have been using bright fabrics, you know, like this right here. And these are what I make for the practice blocks. And so you'll see on the pattern that I have to share with you here in just a second, it's using a Lori Holt fabric. I believe it's Farmer's Daughter is what I've colored it in. And those are for people that like the bright colors. And I love the Lori Holt bright colors, but I just thought these would probably go better in my dining room. It is more of these colors, and so I think it'll look nicer in our dining room. So that's why I'm choosing these. But you choose whichever fabric line or fabric style, or use scraps. Scraps would look beautiful. So let me set these aside. So here is our chicken water block. This is our fourth block in the series. And as you can see, it has the water up here, and then the water goes down as the chicks and the hens and the roosters drink out of it. Now, if you are familiar with chickens and you've had and raised chickens before, then you've probably seen all different kinds of chicken waters. I have a chicken water that has the glass base, and then you would use an old 1-quart canning jar for the top. And we would always use that for our chicks because it wouldn't be that tall and they could get into that really easily without falling in. And you would put your water in your jar, then you'd put this on top, then you would flip the jar over and it would start coming out, but when it came to a certain level, it would stop, and if the chicks drank out of it, more water would drip in. And so you could easily see when you needed to refill your chicken water. Now today they sell these little red bases that you can still attach a jar to. And they also sell plastic jars that will go on top here. And they have them in different sizes, so they can be, you know, really big if you have lots of chickens, or small if it's just for some chicks. But this is the one I came up with, and I thought it was really cute. So here's the place where the chicks will get their water. Here is the water, it comes up to that level. And then of course we have a mason jar that is this aqua color. So that's what my envision is on this block. And you can't have water on a farm without having some flies around. I guarantee you that. And so I had to add some really cute flies. Now, if you are a beginning quilter and this right here intimidates you, we can also adjust so there's no flies on it and just cut one strip of fabric. And I'll tell you what size that is in a minute. But if you have some confidence and you want to give it a try, I encourage you to do so. I do suggest that these fabrics right here are starched before cutting. These right here are nice big pieces and you don't need to starch. You can if you want. Some people starch everything. I tend to only starch when I'm doing small piecing, and this is going to be very small piecing right here. So if you decide to make the flies before you cut your pieces out of your fabric, and these are just really small squares, so you just have to take a little bit of a 5-inch square and starch it, or just starch a 5-inch square. These the same thing, just starch and you won't use much fabric at all. And then of course the background, I would starch this part right here as well, because there's really small corners for these stitch and flip corners. So that's what we have here. Now, this was my practice block, but this is the block we're making. I'm going to show you how to insert a 6-inch quilt block if you would like. You don't have to. I've got the pattern written this way, and then I have the adjustment on this page right here, where this is the water fabric for the top and the bottom, and then I'll have a, we'll do the block separately, and you can just place the block right in as we build it. So you can use any block you want. I chose the Shoefly block, and I bet you know why. So this is what we're getting ready to make, but we're going to put the Shoefly block in the middle, and I'm going to walk you through the whole thing. Now this is a free pattern, and if you have been with me for a while, you know that we have changed the way I offer this free pattern. So in order to get this free pattern, all you need to do is watch the video, and then a whole screen will pop up in the middle of the video, and it will have a large QR code on it, and it will also have a link for the download. So if you can use your QR code reader, you can just use that and it'll take you right to the pattern. If you aren't familiar with QR readers and you don't know how to use those, there's a link at the bottom that I've shortened, and all you have to do is type in that shortened link into your browser, which means you just type it into the browse bar of whatever you're using. If you're using Chrome, you just type it up there in your browser bar and you will have it pop up. It may show a real quick commercial on the written link, because I had to use a link shortener and I don't want to pay for a subscription, so they'll just put a real quick commercial. If you don't want to watch the commercial, you'll see a little link saying continue to your download. Just click on that and it'll take you right here, and you'll be able to print this off or download it, whichever you want. It takes you to my Google Drive, which allows you to have this, and it is free. So let's get on with making this quilt block. Now, I don't know if you can hear outside or not, but we have sheep in the field right behind our yard, and those are our sheep that we have. And sometimes the mamas and the babies get separated, and the babies are hollering for their moms, and the mom is either too busy eating grass to care or they're trying to find each other. So I think you might be hearing some of that in the background, and you'll probably be hearing birds because my windows are all completely open. It is in the upper 70s today. It is sunny and it is beautiful, and it is really, really hard for me to be in my sewing studio today. So I hope we can get this done so I can get outside. So let's get started. I have all of my pieces cut according to my cutting instructions, and that is this right here. I have all of my fabric, I have the number of cuts that I need, the cut size, and then I have the letters, and these are my letters right here so that I know which ones I need. Then I'm going to be following along, and I'm not going to follow this one because this is the one with just the plain water. I'm going to be following along with this drawing right here because this one has where we put our 6-inch block. So we are ready to start that. So the first thing we're going to be putting together in this block are the fly blocks, and we can put the whole block, it's just a square here. each of these whole blocks together and then set them aside and then work on the rest of the block. And the reason I'm starting with the fly block is because sometimes when you're working on quilting and you get to the end, your brain is already tired and things that normally are easy become hard. So we're going to start with the flies because that's the most difficult block in this whole block right here. And we might as well do those first. So what I'm going to need is I'm going to need the R for the body. So I'm going to have 2 of those. And then I'm going to also need 2 T's for each of the flies. And I'm going to probably call these flies bees at some point. But these are flies. And these T's are going to be going right in the opposite corners of my R block. Just like this. Now, I am not going to put them both on because it's going to be really close as to when I sew, whether or not I sew that other block as well. And I don't want to get them sewn down. So what I'm going to do is do one corner at a time. And I am just going to take one corner off right there. Put a little bit of glue. Let me bring you down. Put a little bit of glue in that upper corner. Line up my edges so that they are all even. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this one. And it does not matter which corner you use, just as long as you're going to use opposite corners on each block, because they can be turned any direction. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to draw a line. And you can use any kind of writing pen. I'm just using my Sew Line Disappearing ink. But this will be in the seam line, so you could use an ink pen or a friction pen or a lead pencil. Any of those would work. And all I'm doing is just drawing the line from corner to corner on those small T blocks. And while I'm doing this, I might as well go ahead and put my lines on my 2 little blocks here as well. And you can just do it corner to corner, doesn't matter which corners. Now I do have lines on this fabric for the T squares, but I don't care which way they go. It's going to be so small, I'm not going to notice. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go to my sewing machine and I am going to stitch right on that line and right on this line, and then I'll bring you right back. And here are our 2 blocks. Now, since these are really small blocks, I'm going to give you a couple of hints to help you out. When I sew small blocks, I reduce my stitch length. So you want to do that. Then I also, when I'm doing these diagonal stitch and flip corners, when I draw my line, I stitch right next to that line toward the outside corner. And that gives me just enough fabric that that seam is taking up so that my corners flip over and match up really nicely. And so that is how I do it. And again, if you're working with small blocks like this, I do suggest starching the fabric on these fabrics for the flies. Now right now you might be hearing a mama and its baby hollering back and forth at each other. And that's a very common sound on our farm. It seems like the babies all of a sudden realize their mamas aren't next to them because they've been off running around playing. And the mamas realize, well, where's my baby? And then they start hollering back and forth for each other until they find each other. It's kind of like Marco Polo. So hopefully they won't be making too much noise while we're sewing. Okay, we've got these 2 corners done. Now we're going to do the same thing with these 2. A little glue. And you can use pins, but I find using this glue makes it so much easier because I don't have to worry about pins getting in my way. And sometimes the pins also distort the fabric. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to sew right on those lines, or just right next to those lines toward the outside corner. So here are those two pieces. I went ahead and ironed it back and then trimmed it 1/4 inch away. And so now we have two corners of our fly's body that have the stitch and flip corners on them, okay? Now let's look at our pattern here. So we're going to be assembling the fly block in columns. We're going to be assembling EKS with these little eyes on them in one column, the fly body and J and T and T and J on another column, and then another piece that's exactly like this one here, okay? Both of these fly blocks are assembled exactly the same way. It's just the way that you turn them when you're putting them into your quilt that makes them going different directions, okay? So that's one thing that's nice. They're going to be the exact same block. So let's go ahead and let's get our E's, because we have two E's here and we have two E's here. We're making this column right here. And our K's, our S's, and I's. So let's see what we have. Okay, so I do have a couple of these blocks that I will be using in other sections. So I'm just bringing the whole clip over, and then we can just take what we need. So let me set this right over here, and we'll just look at this block right here. So we need E, K, S. And we're gonna put out all of them here in a second. E, K, and S. And on S, we are going to put these little tiny I squares. And these are just 3/4 inch squares, so they're very small. And we want to put them face down in the corner that's closest to K. And these should fit perfectly, so we can put them on at the same time. So here is that block right there, that section, I guess, that column. And so we need 4 of them for both B's. So I'm going to go ahead and lay those out. They should all look identical. Now I suggest that you not use directional fabric on this if you're wanting to make it directional, because that would be a big headache. But if you are an overachiever and want to do that, that's fine. I have some directional fabric, but I don't care which direction it goes in. I know there's some wonderful quilters out there who will make perfect blocks, and that is really wonderful. But I'm at the stage of life right now where I'm just the get it done kind of girl. So I do have some I's left over, and I do have some E's left over, but we've used all of our K's and our S's. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, the first thing, I'm going to take these sections right here, and that is the section that is S, and I am going to put a little bit of glue in each of those corners, and then I'm going to put my eyes face down, so their right sides are together, right on top, just like this. Now, if you need to, you can put your lines. I have the seam tape, so I'm not going to put mine on all of my blocks. I'll do this one to share with you. But I'm going to just use my seam tape. And really, this is such a short distance. It's not hard to do, but we really need to be exact on these little tiny blocks. So be sure you follow that line and you have a nice line from corner to corner. So I'm going to go ahead and put glue on all of these, and I will take these sections, these 4 sections, to my sewing machine, and I will sew right on those lines. Then I will press them back, making sure they cover up the background fabric. And then I will trim them a 1/4 inch away and make sure they're ironed nice and flat. All right, so I have all of these pieces put together, and I've left one that I didn't trim so that I would show you. Remember, we flip back that square so we have a triangle there. Make sure that it covers that back fabric on both sides, and it does. So now we just need to trim that back fabric off a 1/4 inch away from that seam. So just like that and that. And I've already got the others trimmed and pressed. And these are actually little flying geese blocks, but we just use the stitch and flip method since they're so small. So that's what we have. And now what we're going to do is we're going to put all of these so that the flying goose is pointing toward this piece right here, which is K. So this is our sections. Okay, and they all are going to look alike. Now we're going to put this flying goose or flying geese piece, and we're going to put it right there with K, and we're going to take it to the sewing machine and stitch a 1/4 inch away. And I definitely would pin this even if you're a good sewer, because it's so small, it's very hard for us to keep our fingers down there. And I am using a stiletto, and this is the Clover, and it's actually a tailor's awl, but it works beautifully for a stiletto because it's very sharp. So when I am holding this, a lot of times I'm feeding it like that, and that way I don't have my fingers right here to be in the way of the needle. So be sure you use something to keep your fingers out of the way. Seam rippers work great if you don't have one of these. So I'm going to do all 4 of these, and then I'll bring you back. And here we have our pieces, and I've just press them back, and I had the seam go toward this piece right here, the K piece. And since these pieces that I was calling flying geese a while ago did not have the 1/4 inch seam on their end, they are going to be cut off, which is exactly what we want. We want that to be a rounded edge because that's the wings. So now we're going to put these back where they were, and we've got this one here, all of them again in the exact same position. Okay, now easy enough, we just need to sew this piece here, this piece here, right there. So be sure you have your right sides together and you're sewing at this seam right here. Okay, so I'm going to take all of those, and again, like I said, when you put a pin in, you can't use the glue on these because you aren't going to be throwing anything away on this one. I always just put it at the end. I match up that end with the edge over there, and then I start here, and then I just pull this pin as I get to it. And remember, since these are small, go ahead and use your stiletto so that you can get this under your needle without getting your finger there too. So I'm going to take all of these, and I always put them in the right direction, and I'll bring you right back. And I have those columns put together. Remember, we're just doing the vertical piecing, and so we've got that first section that we'll just call it a column there, and now we're going to be doing this section right here. So I need J, T, and I. So I have my eyes right here, and I'm going to set these up here and bring our little fly bodies down. Okay, so we're just looking at this section right here. What we have is a J, and then we have a T, and then we have a J and a T. Okay, so that's what we've got there. Let's do the same thing with this one. There. And this one we're only going to have 4 because this is the middle section. These were both the outside and these up here were both the left and the right columns. So we're just working on this one, and then we'll have all of our columns done. So that's what we have there. But we do need to put an eye in the corner of the T's. So this is going to go here, here. Okay. So what we can do, we can just pull out these sections right here. And it doesn't matter which corner we put it in right now, because we can turn that block whichever way we need to. And on this one, again, if you need to draw your vertical line on your I square, go right ahead. If you have the seam tape, just use that. This we can use the glue on, because we are going to cut that corner off right there. That will be waste. And so I am just going to put all of these on again. Just make sure they're lined up nice and straight. Because these are such small blocks, a little bit off will make your block look really wonky. So try to get it as close as you can to right where it needs to go. Okay. So as you see, when I turn these, I can make them all be in the same corner, but we can turn them on the block and they'll be in the right spot. So I'm going to take all of these and I'm going to sew right down the diagonal of this I block. All right, I have those all sewn and I have trimmed those three, but I've got this one right here that we'll do together. Flip it back. It did match up when I pressed it, so I can now trim that off 1/4 inch from the seam, and they are all pressed and trimmed. So now let's put these back, and now this time let's make sure we've got them in the right position. So we have J right here, and this is the T. Then you have T up here. Let's see here. So this is going to be the same one. They're going to be both alike. So these two are alike. Okay, up here we have J and then we have T, but the T is up facing the left like that. Okay, so now what we need to do is just put right sides together, and we need to sew 1/4 inch from the edge. Now again, use a pin, use a stiletto. These are really small pieces. So we will sew each of these sections, there are 4 sections together. And let's put these on. Again, I just press toward the plain fabric that doesn't have any seams, and that is J. So let's put these together the way they go. That one. That one. And you're going to find that all of them were actually the exact same block. It's just that they were turned differently. So that will help when you're sewing. You'll know if you've got one wrong, if it looks different. Okay. I think I have those laid right. Yes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this one right here, right sides together. And I am going to pin it. Now, sometimes with these really small blocks, if your cutting isn't exact and your seam allowance isn't exact, you may be off a little bit and your pieces may not line up, especially because we have so many pieces put together here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to match up those edges and then put whatever is loose toward my feed dogs. So on this one right here, I've got just a little bit of looseness on this one here, so that's going to go toward my feed dogs, and that will pull that in nice and gradually. So I think I can go ahead, yes I can. I'm going to go ahead and pin both sides on, because when I stitch it, it won't stitch over the other fabric. So again, match up those edges and put whatever's the loose end toward your feed dogs. So I'll go ahead and sew both of these 1/4 inch from this edge, 1/4 inch from this edge, and then I'll bring you back. And there we have those pieces. And what I did was I pressed toward the fly's body on those. Okay, so let's set them back like we had them. I believe that's the way we had them. And now we're going to take our pieces that we had up here, and we are going to be putting them on the sides. So this one will be flipped. Aren't those cute? So now all we need to do is sew these together. Now go ahead and match up your ends like we usually do. And then we have one seam that is matching. And we had a seam matching on the other one, but it was such a short distance away. This seam right here was matching. So you want to try to get those points, but if they get off, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's so small, you're not going to notice it. So those are there. But these are a little bit more, you can see these a little bit more. And so what we have is a diagonal seam on this side matching up with a vertical seam on this side, okay? So what we're going to do is, like we've done in previous blocks, we're going to estimate, or you can measure, a 1/4 inch down from that seam. And then we're going to flip it over. And if it hits on the seam, you're in good shape. And this one is close enough, so I'm going to keep that. And I can't put the other end on because if I do, I will end up sewing it down. So I will put this on after this one's sewn. And the same thing here. Go ahead and put these together, matching your seams, or your edges, I should say. Just like that. Just like that. And then check to see if they're matching. 1/4 inch away from that top edge, and it looks good. So we are ready to sew. So I'm going to sew this a 1/4 inch away, this a 1/4 inch away, and then I'm going to come back and put these on as well. So my fly block will almost be done when we come back. And there we have that. And they're looking awfully cute, but they're not quite ready yet. We still have this little point right here and this little point right here, and they're not square. And I specifically made these blocks into a square so that we can put as many as we want into this block, or we can also use this as another block. These would also work for a little pin cushion if you want a fly pin cushion. Wouldn't it be cute to have one of these in the middle of a Shoefly block? I think that would be really cute. So the next piece that we need in order to make this square and also to round off these corners is the piece H. And that is just a long rectangle piece, and it is going to go at the top and the bottom, and it will turn this block into a square. So this one is real simple. We're just going to put these right sides together, pin so that the ends are matching. No seams need to match because there's no seams on H. And then just press. So I'm going to go and sew all of these, and I'll be right back. So here are the finished fly blocks, and I think they turned out really good. I went ahead and just took my straight edge and I just took off any of the little threads and stuff, and if there was something that was just a little off, I went ahead and cut that, just trimmed it up. You don't have to, but I know some of you really like your blocks to be really nice looking all the time, and so if that is you, go ahead and trim. If not, don't worry about it. So now what we need to do is we need to incorporate these into our block, but we're not ready for it yet. So here's the block right here that we are making. And if you found that these were too difficult as you watched this video and you thought, oh, I don't know if I can do that, they're really small piecing, then you can leave these off entirely. We will just make one strip of fabric here and one strip of fabric here, and I'll tell you the measurements for that when we get to that point. But if you want to give it a try, because they are fun and it is good practice, go ahead and try. But I do suggest really starching those fabrics for this block right here, because that is small piecing, and when you starch it, it doesn't make it as hard. It really goes together quite easy. It's just a matter of cutting precisely and keeping your 1/4 inch seam just right on. Okay, so since we're not going to use these just yet, I'm going to scoop those aside. And then you need to decide, are you making a block that looks like this or that looks like this? Okay, if you don't want to make this Shoefly block and you just want to make it plain like this, then you're just going to open up your pattern and use this measurement right here. Just like this is the one for this pattern. And it's also the one for this one, but there's just one change, and here's the change right here. So this is M, so you're going to cut piece M for the water, 6.5 by 7.5 inches, and that's going to be one big rectangle, okay? But if you're wanting to do this one, you're going to make the Shoefly block, and we'll make one right now. Then after you make the Shoefly block, you are going to cut this fabric instead of what you're cutting for M. So anything that you have M for, you're just going to mark M off of this. Just mark M off. And then you're going to use U and V and your block. And those will replace M. You are still going to need N, so don't erase N, because N is right here at the jar mouth, and you'll still need that no matter which block you're doing. But we're going to be making these two little pieces right here, and I think it accidentally cut it off, but I'll put it back on. We're going to need U and we're going to need V plus our block. So let's start by making the Shoefly block. So when I'm making my Shoefly block, I want my block to blend in with the water. So for the background fabric, I'm using the same fabric that I'm going to be using for the water, okay? And that is this color right here, and it kind of looks black on the camera. There you go. But it's actually a nice kind of a tealish blue, but it's got some black scrolling, and I think the camera's picking that up. And then for these triangles and the middle square, I'm going to use this yellow. So here are the cuts that you need. You're going to need 2 of your Shoefly block fabric at 3 inches squared and 1 at 2.5 inch squared. And for the background, you're going to need 2 at 3 inches squared and 4 at 2.5 inch squared. Remember, the background is the water, okay? That's the only pieces you need for this block, and so I hope you got a screenshot of that or took notes. So let me pull out, and here's just a small Shoefly block. It's smaller than what we're making. We're making a 6 inch finished, so it's going to be 6.5 inches before we put it into our water feeder. So what we need to do is we first of all need to take our 3 inch squares, and we are going to be making these blocks right here, those corner blocks. And in order to make those, we're going to make half square triangles 2 at a time. And so we're going to put right sides together, just like that. We are going to draw a diagonal line right down the middle. Now this is not a stitch line. This is, oops, and I kind of goofed that one up, but it's okay, I'll know. It is a line that we're going to sew a 1/4 inch away from on both sides, okay? So when I sew this together, I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch on this side away from this line. I'll turn it, and then I'll sew a 1/4 inch away from the other side. So we'll have 2 sewing lines right there. So I'm going to do that, and I'll bring you right back. And there I have, I think you can see better on this side, I've sewn 2 seams and they're each a 1/4 inch away from that middle line. Now that middle line is our cutting line, and you can use a rotary cutter or a pair of scissors and just cut on that line so that you have a 1/4 inch seam on both sides. And now we have 4 half square triangles. But these need to be 2.5 inches. So we're going to measure. I had us cut just a tiny bit bigger, so there may be a little trimming that we need to do. So right now, these are just a slight bit bigger. So I can use this ruler right here if I wanted to. It's actually a 2.5 inch ruler, or I could use a square ruler, or I could use a ruler that actually trims half square triangles. If I use this one, it does have that diagonal line, which I need, and I'm going to actually use this one here because it's got that point. So I could just put this right here on this point. This is a 2.5 inch wide ruler, and I could make sure that this line is right on top of that seam. I might want to take a little bit of off all sides, and so I will give myself a little more than 2.5 inches up here, down here, a little more up here, a little extra over here, and a little extra over here. And I can trim that and that. And then take this up corner here, put it to the opposite side. And now I know these 2 sides are nice, straight, and square. So then I can put 2.5 right here, put this right on the edge, just like that, and then trim, and make sure that this line is right on your seam, and then trim that off. And now I have a nice 2.5 inch square. Now if you don't have this ruler, you should have a square ruler. So if you are new to sewing and you don't have a square ruler, I would suggest you invest in one. I think the 5.5 inch ones, 6.5 inch ones, they're good sizes for small projects and working with blocks, but you can get bigger for squaring up really big blocks. But I would invest in some kind of a square ruler. And when you are looking for a good square ruler, I like to have the amounts, this one has them in 1/4 inch increments. It is the perfect 5 ruler. It's exactly 5 inches. This was something we had in our sew sampler box, but most of my rulers have marks 1/8 inch. And I also have one that's a 5.5 inch one, and I don't know if I've got it right here. Yep, right here. So here is a 5.5 inch one, and this one, I don't know if you can see or not, it does have the 1/8 inch markings, and I really like that. Every once in a while when I'm doing really small blocks, I need that 1/8 of an inch, but you don't have to have it. If you don't like the small blocks, this one would be fine with the 1/4 inch. But your ruler should have a diagonal line going down it. Some of them have just one, some of them have 2. And I'm just going to use this one. It doesn't matter which of these I use. I just need to use one that is the same size or bigger than what I'm cutting. So I would need a 2.5 inch ruler or larger, because that's the size of my half square triangle. So what I do is I take my ones and my ones, place them on the top right corner. Now I can see when I put this right on that seam line, that line right on the seam line, that this block is a little bit big. It's hanging out past the 2.5 inch here. It's not doing too much, but it is hanging out up here and a little bit over here. So if I want to get a little bit off of all edges, I will just situate it so that I can. Sometimes I will just line it up on these 2 edges if they're already nice and straight and square, and that way I only have to trim 2 sides. So let me grab my rotary cutter here, and I've got it lined up there, and let's see what we take off. Not much, just a little bit. Then I flip it so that this corner that was up at the top right is now at the bottom left. And then I put this edge on the 2.5 inch line and this edge on the 2.5 inch line. When I do that, this middle diagonal line should go right on my seam. And then I can trim. And so this one wasn't too bad as far as being too big. It was just about right. But I like to be pretty accurate, so I'm trimming mine. So there's that. Now, if you have a specific ruler that does half square triangles, then you can use that. And there's several different kinds. This is the one I use, and I've got the larger version too, and it's the Quilt in a Day 4.5 inch triangle square up ruler. And let me see if I can, that one right there. I also have the 6.5 inch, and I believe there's a 9.5 inch one as well. Now they also have new ones that have the little clipped out edges where you can cut your dog ears, and those are a little more expensive, but they do have those. But I just have always used this. It's not as expensive as some of them, and it works really well. So I'm doing a 2.5 inch block. That means I'm using this 1/2 inch size. I'm going to do this. There is another side that goes whole inches, but it also has 1/8 inches, 1/4 inches, and 1/2 inches. It just doesn't have the lines that go all the way across, but it does have it so that you can do those sizes. But since this one has a 1/2 inch increment over here, it'll be easy to line up. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to put, whoops, I'm going to keep this closed. I don't even have to open it. And I'm not sure, yeah, we can see the seam better on that side. So I'm going to put this 2.5 inch line right on that seam. Now if I go over here, if this was a really straight edge and both fabrics were right there, I could just trim this side and it would be fine. But I'm not sure, yeah, this one's overlapping a little bit, so it's not quite perfect. And let's go ahead and make it look good. If we're gonna take the time to do it, let's do it right. So I've got the 2.5 inch line on my seam, and I've got a little hanging over on both sides. So all I need to do is that and that. And there is my fabric right there. And I now have a perfect 2.5 inch half square triangle. Now I do have the dog ears on this, and what I do is I just take my rotary cutter and I cut in, but I don't cut that seam. I just cut them off. Now I don't cut them straight off like that because you'd still see them. I cut them toward the middle like that. Now they are gone, and that's a good one. And so then I just like this one so well, I'm going to do this. It's so much easier. You don't have to iron them open. Just leave them closed. You only have to do 2 sides and sometimes just 1 side. Trim off my dog ears. And we're good. So I'm going to give these a good press. It doesn't, let's see what, I'm just going to see if it makes any difference. It doesn't make any difference in the direction you press them. I will probably press them toward the darker fabric, which would be my dark blue. So I'll do that and I'll be right back. All right, got those all nicely pressed, and I think we're ready to lay this out. We still have these squares right here, but we don't have to do anything to them. And so we're going to put, whoops, our background fabric, which is our water fabric, to the outside of those corners, just like this. Then our yellow block is the center of our Shoefly block, and that is a 2.5 inch squared piece. Then these 4 2.5 inch square pieces are the pieces between our half square triangles. So there is our block. Just take a look at it and make sure it's right. And now what we're going to do is just a 9 patch. We're just going to sew it together. So I'm going to take these pieces right here, put them right sides together, so 1/4 inch away. Then I'll flip these open. And then I'll put these right here, right sides together, stitch 1/4 inch away, flip them open, and I'll have 3 horizontal strips, and I'll bring you back then. So now we have these rows all sewn together. I have pressed toward the water fabric, and that way we're going to have nice and nesting seams. So we're just going to put these together, nest our seam right there, put a pin in it, and do the same with this one. And I'm going to go ahead and do this one too. I'll just hold the fabric back. Just be sure those seams are right on top of each other, and when you nest them, you can just feel them snap in place. Okay, so I'm going to sew 1/4 inch away from both of these edges. Here is our finished Shoefly block. It is right now 6.5 inches, but when it's in a project and it's finished, it's going to be 6 inches. So we have this Shoefly block and our cute little flies. They are all done. We're going to keep the Shoefly block, but I'm going to keep the flies up here, and we're going to continue on. So the next thing I need to do is I need to get U and I need to get V. So U, the thinner piece, is going to go at the top, and V, the wider piece, is going to go at the bottom. And all we're going to do here is just sew those together 1/4 inch from the seam, and then we will have the same size block that you would have if you had just used one solid block. So I'll bring you right back. And there we have it. Now at this point, this piece right here is the same size as M right here. So now from here on out, we're just going to be doing the same thing for both blocks, with and without the Shoefly block. So now we're going to go up, and we need to get some of the glass fabric, which is L. And we're going to put that right there. So let's go ahead and sew this on. Right sides together, pin it on both sides, so 1/4 inch from the top. And there we have it. It is stitched on the top there. At this point, we now need to round our corners to make it look more like a jar. So we need B's and E's. The B's are a little smaller, and they are just going to go in the top corners. E's are a little bit larger, and I've already gone ahead and I put a diagonal on this one. If you don't have seam tape, you'll need to put diagonals on all of yours. And again, instead of pins, let's go ahead and glue. That would make it easier. It's a beautiful day out. I need to get outside and get things planted. I worked last night in the yard, so today I need to get out. Alright, so now we've got those glued down. I'm just going to do the stitch on the diagonal line, and then we're going to cut the back off and flip them back. Alright, and there we have the top part of our water put together. I've got the corners put on and trimmed off, and right now this is measuring 9.5 inches. So it's 9.5 inches long. So what we're going to do now is put our sides on with our flies, but if you're not going to be making the fly blocks, you can just use background fabric, and instead of using cuts A, C, D, and the fly blocks, you can cut, let's see, make sure I tell you the correct size, 9.5 inches long and 3.5 inches wide. Two of those, 9.5 by 3.5, and that will be fine for the sides. Okay, so we are going to be putting the flies on since we've already made them. So let me gather up. I need A and C and D plus my fly blocks. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure we have our flies going in the right direction. This one is pointing up and to the left, and this one's pointing up and to the right, okay? So then it looks like we have C right here, and that's going to be the rectangle going long ways horizontally. And D, rectangle long ways going vertically. Then we also need A over here. Okay, so that's the layout. Now you still have 2 of your C's left, so be sure you keep those. Now all we need to do is stitch these all together. So I'll do this one, right sides together, stitch a 1/4 inch away. This one, right sides together, stitch a 1/4 inch away, and then I'll put this one on, right sides together, stitch a 1/4 inch away, and I'll have 2 long strips. I'll bring you right back. Okay, we have our sides all sewn together. Got a few threads there still. I'll get those. And just make sure you got them in the right spot. You know, it doesn't matter if you do have it flipped, you know. They're just flying in different directions, so you can decide which way to put them. But this is the way the pattern is, so I'm going to use that. And now we need to put the sides here with the water feeder. So I'm just going to take a couple of pins here because we do have a couple of places where we need to match up seams. And one of them is right here. So they will nest because I do happen to have them ironed the correct way. And then there's nothing to match here, but we do want to match the corner at the top here. And then we'll see if, looks like they're fine, so we don't need to put either one specifically on the bottom because neither side needs to actually be taken in. So I'll just put some pins to hold them in place. Then let's try this one. This one is going to meet just right here where these seams, actually this bottom one here. If you don't have the block in the middle, you're not going to match any seams. But, and if you don't have the bees, you're not going to match any seams. But if you have the block and the bees, right here we're going to match a seam. And let's see, do I have them? Nope, I don't have them going the right direction. So I am just going to flip this one here down because that won't hurt it any. And then I'll press it here in a minute. But that way our seams will nest right there. And that will look good. And then over here, nothing is matching, so we'll just match the corner. And then just make sure our edges are together at the top. And I am ready to sew a 1/4 inch away from both sides. All right, there we have all of those pieces sewn together, and doesn't that look cute? I'm liking the fabrics, very cute. Okay, let's move on down to the base of it, and we can just start here at the very bottom, and let's get, it looks like Q, P, and C. Okay, so this is the tray at the bottom. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have Q right in the middle. We're going to have C's in the long way. The rectangles are going horizontally. And then we're going to have a stitch and flip corner on the inside of C's. And they'll just match up on all 3 sides there, just like that. So what we can do is we can take our pen, and we need to have these diagonal lines going out like this. And just draw those. And this one will go out like this. And you can either put a little glue here, but on this one I am going to be saving the half square triangle that this one makes. And so when I stitch this one, I'm going to go about a 1/2 inch over and do another stitch line. Go about a 1/2 inch over and do another stitch line, and then I'll have a couple of free half square triangles instead of wasting that fabric. So let me start with these 2 and let me sew directly on those lines. And here is what I have. So here is the diagonal line that I sewed on, and then I sewed about a 1/2 inch over. So I'm going to just cut right between those so that each has about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And when I open that up, there we have a half square triangle. So let's do the same here. So I'll add these to my half square triangle pile for another project. So let's go ahead and open these up, and these are going to be like this and like this. Okay, so I'll press those, and then I'm going to sew both of these just right sides together, a 1/4 inch away from the edge. And there we have those pieces sewn together to make the dish portion. And we now need this section right here to connect the 2 together, and that is F, N, and O. So let's grab those. Here is N, here is O, and then F goes on both sides, just like that. So let's sew these 2 together first. They should match up perfectly. And we will sew a 1/4 inch away from the top edge here. And there we have that piece right there. Now they should match up perfectly with F. And we're just going to put F right here, so a 1/4 inch. And this F right here, so a 1/4 inch. And I'll bring you right back. And here is the final piece that's going to go right there. And all we need to do is sew these together. So I will sew this one right here, 1/4 inch away. There's nothing to match. And then we'll open it up and we'll sew these 2 together a 1/4 inch away. And I'll bring you right back. And here is our finished block. And I think it looks just fantastic. What do you think? I think this is going to go perfect with our other blocks. Let's pull those out. So it goes really well with our blue rooster, with our red hen, and with our egg basket. I think they all coordinate really nicely. So on these, on my blocks, again, since I am not having time right now to make a full-size quilt, I decided to incorporate these 12-inch blocks into placemats. So if you've seen my previous videos, and I'll have a link to all of them in the description box below, I have a playlist with all of them in it. I share with you how I piece this placemat and the size of all the cuts and everything, and you can find these little blocks as well. But I am going to be turning this chicken water into a placemat as well. And for my 3 blocks over here, I thought I would just go ahead and keep that Shoefly block because I really like Shoefly with the flies, and I think that would be cute. Now if you wanted to incorporate the flies, that would be cute too. You'd probably be able to get more than 3 in there, or you can adjust the size by adding a sashing or a border around them, because these are 4-inch. So if you follow the placement and the fabric cuts to make the placemat, then you'll need a 4-inch block. But you can change it so that it matches what you need. So here is the block that I'm going to use. Now, if you want to make this block right here, you're going to have some different cuts because it's a different size block. Now, if you remember, this block right here is a 6-inch finish block, and because the Shoefly block is a 9-patch, we have a 3x3, and you can easily divide 6x3, and all of your blocks are going to be the same size. But when you have a 4-inch block, it's really hard to divide that by 3 and have a decent number to cut. So what I've done is I've adjusted it so that we have smaller corner pieces, and our blocks that are right here, the background blocks that are on the side, they're actually rectangles. They're not exactly square. So here are the cuts for this one. This is what we have. So you'll need 2 at 2 1/4 inch square for each block. Now you'll need 3 blocks altogether, so you'll need 2 of 3 different fabrics, and so you'll have 6 cuts altogether. Then down here you'll have 1 that's 2 inches for each block. So if you have 3 different blocks, you'll have 3 different colors, and each one will be for 1 block. Our background fabric, which is the same as my background fabric, you can do what you want, but I like to keep it all the same. It blends all together nicely. You'll need 4 that are 1 3/4 by 2, and that is these blocks right here. Okay, and then you'll need 2 that are 2 1/4 square. Now you're going to take this block that's 2 1/4 and this block that's 2 1/4, and just like when we made this one over here, you're going to put the fabrics together, draw the line, so on both sides 1/4 inch away from the line, and then trim it down. You want to trim down your half square triangles to 1 3/4 inch. Okay, 1 3/4, 1 3/4, 1 3/4, and 1 3/4. Now your center block is 2 inches, but this block right here is 1 3/4 by 2 inches. So that way they'll all fit together just fine. You really don't notice that they're different, but they are. And that's common to change the sizes on your center block and your corner blocks on a Shoefly block. They don't always have to be equal. So be sure you take a screenshot of this, and remember that your half square triangles need to be 1 3/4 inch trimmed down, and then that should get you to put this together just fine. Again, just follow the instructions that we did for this one. Okay, and I've got one of mine done. I'm going to do one in this color and one in this color, and I think those will look good with this. All right, so there we have it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you are sewing along and you're enjoying making these blocks. I think they're a lot of fun. I just wish I had more time to enjoy the sewing right now. We are just really busy with our sheep, our garden, our transformation of our bedroom upstairs, and just everything that goes on in regular life. So I hope you are having a great week and you're able to get outside and enjoy the weather. And if you're gardening, I'm hoping you're able to get out and get things planted. We are doing that right now and getting some progress made. I hope that you have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you back here next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.